Chapter 361. All three together. Xiao Chen had infused his essence and physical strength before stomping. The broad arena, with a foundation of heavenly mountain stones and coating of frost iron, slowly and unexpectedly sank into the ground. Bang! 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 The ground could not withstand the pressure of the arena sinking. Deep cracks formed and quickly expanded. The cracks expanded relentlessly. As the ground tore apart, the other arenas on the drill grounds immediately cracked and shattered. The 1,000-meter-long drill ground shook endlessly. Even the surrounding spectator stands trembled. The quaking lasted for a period before coming to a slow end. The arena under Xiao Chen was already level with the ground. A surging aura came from Xiao Chen, rushing to the sky without end. He contested it with the three's auras, revealing its sharpness. Do I qualify for the three of you to attack together now? Xiao Chen's tone was calm as he spoke. He revealed his sharpness on his well-defined face. He was like a treasured saber, drawn and seeking someone to test his edge on. Xiao Chen had wanted to test his true strength long ago. He wanted to know exactly how strong he was. The earlier few fights did not allow him to express himself fully. The feeling was similar to that of being very excited and preparing to launch a full-powered strike, yet having an already defeated opponent, with no outlet to vent one's strength. This had happened to Xiao Chen over and over again. He had enough of this. He only wanted an enjoyable fight, utilizing his full strength. On the platform, Feng Xuanyi, who had been silent, suddenly said, "If this fellow can emerge victoriously, he will probably steal all the luck of these noble clan heirs. Who knows, he might really become a legend." TL note. Luck, this is slightly different from the luck we know. At this point in time, all I can figure out is that it can be stolen from others or gained from certain events. This luck is apparently for cultivators and is probably related to luck as we know it as well. The strength that Xiao Chen displayed in his strong aura made the three change their expression. They were alarmed and afraid. Silent. In that case, I will take it as your agreement. Xiao Chen said indifferently and pushed off the ground. He relied purely on his physical strength and shot toward the three like an arrow. Ji Chengkong shouted coldly and said, "Since you seek death, I can't be bothered to talk about righteousness and justice with you." Astral swordplay. Resplendent starlight. The sky above the arena grew dark. Countless stars flickered in the sky. Day had instantly become night. Starlight shone down, and a deep starry sky appeared in Ji Chengkong's eyes. He brandished his sword and rushed forward while carrying the power of the starlight. Ding! At the same time, Yuchangsi drew the holy weapon, the beauty under the moon. The sword reflected a golden full moon. There seemed to be another world within that moonlight. There was a drawn-out hum, like the pleasing voice of a girl. It pulled at the heartstrings of those who heard it. Duan Muqing, who had been silent for a long time, also made her move. Her fine black hair turned white instantly. Her eyes completely lost all human emotion. It was extremely cold. A slender sword appeared in her hand. It was infused with a bone-chilling state of ice as she pierced it toward Xiao Chen. At this moment, even though she would not willingly admit it, she was no longer a match for Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen looked at the three who made their moves at the same time and smiled faintly. He suddenly stopped and landed firmly on the ground. Xiao Chen brandished his saber, and a flower bud appeared below his feet. After a while, a Wukui flower bud, flickering with alternating purple and red lights, enveloped Xiao Chen. Bang! 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 The attacks of the three struck the flower bud. However, the bud did not move at all. It flickered between a purple electric and scarlet light. It was incredibly odd. The three exchanged a look. They quickly circulated their essence before sending even more ferocious attacks at Xiao Chen. They had infused their respective states with their sword techniques. The force was directed to the ground, and deep cracks appeared. However, that strange flower bud still did not move. Within the flower bud, Xiao Chen's expression did not change. He suppressed the surging qi and blood in his body, and he made hand seals. Wukui blossoms. When the third wave of attacks was about to land, the purple and red flower bud suddenly released a surging shockwave. The three could not react in time. The shockwave struck them all and threw them backward. Countless flower petals danced in the wind. The purple and red flower petals filled the drill grounds. It was gorgeous to behold. Xiao Chen pushed off the ground and chased after the slower Yuchangsi. As Xiao Chen traveled through the flower petals, his speed increased explosively. In an instant, he caught up to Yuchangsi. Yuchangsi's expression turned grave. He suddenly leapt up 100 meters and turned around. Countless stars appeared above them. The star that represented Yuchangsi in the boundless river of stars suddenly shone brightly, and a resplendent pillar of light descended from the sky. Astral swordplay, eternal light. A vast sword light appeared on his blade as Yuchangsi fired it at Xiao Chen with lightning speed. Boom! The sword light was very bright and dazzling. A seemingly bottomless pit appeared in the ground of the drill grounds. The sight was frightening. All this happened in the time for a spark to fly. It was so fast that the crowd could not react to it. Did I hit him? Yuchangsi frowned slightly and heaved a sigh of relief. After executing this move within a short span of time, he was already spent. That move is pretty strong. Unfortunately, it is useless if it does not hit. Suddenly, Xiao Chen's calm voice came from behind Yuchangsi. Yuchangsi's face fell, and he quickly raised his sword to block his chest. Dang! A saber hacked out, and Yuchangsi slid back several meters. The vibration of his sword made his right hand feel numb. So, he switched to a two-handed grip. The flower petals filling the air gave off an invisible light. When the light shone on Xiao Chen, his speed increased by 30%. Yuchangsi had just retreated, but Xiao Chen arrived beside him once again. Xiao Chen's saber light flickered, moving relentlessly. He sent out more than 100 strikes in an instant. Retreat, 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 retreat again. Yuchangsi could barely block Xiao Chen's attacks. He was suppressed to the point where he had no opportunity to take a breather. In a breath of time, he retreated several hundred meters. Wukui. A strand of killing qi came from behind Xiao Chen. He twisted his body to the side, and he saw that it was Yuchangsi, charging forth and brandishing the beauty under the moon. Yuchangsi took a prolonged breath as he retreated 100 meters. Right after Xiao Chen dodged Yuchangshi's attack, an intensely cold aura came from above. Duan Muqing charged ahead as well. Xiao Chen smiled gently and swept his saber across. He deflected Yuchangshi's sword before performing a somersault and dodging the two's attacks. Dang! 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 The two sent attacks at Xiao Chen relentlessly. The state of ice exhibited to its limits. A cold qi seeped into Xiao Chen's body via his skin, slowing him slightly. Occasionally, a gentle hum would come from Yuchangshi's sword. It was very pleasing to the ear, making one to want to listen. This distracted Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen infused the state of massacre into his saber techniques. He maintained his frame of mind as he waved his saber, blocking the two's attacks. Although Xiao Chen could block the sword, he could not block the sword light. Bloody wounds appeared on his fair skin. Duan Muqing and Yuchangsi were not in better positions. Xiao Chen's saber light had two different kinds of states infused into it. When it struck their bodies, the damage was obvious. Ha! A ray of starlight descended behind Xiao Chen. Yuchangsi had rested and rejoined the fight. The three formed a circle and surrounded Xiao Chen. The four of them battled in the petal-filled air. Dust was kicked up from the ground. There were ice, starlight, moonlight, and the electric light that flickered between red and purple. Dust filled the air, shockwaves flew all over the place. The spectators' eyes widened as they watched the fight nervously. The intensity of this fight had far surpassed their expectations. Xiao Chen was surrounded by the perils of fighting against three at the same time. It was like a small boat in a torrential storm and surging sea. It shook like it could sink at any time. However, it did not do so in the end. Just when everyone thought that Xiao Chen would die, he dodged the killing move and made a sharp counter-attack at the same time. Xiao Chen's white robes were already stained with blood. He smiled bitterly to himself. This was very enjoyable, but the price was high. We, cultivators, are born in this age full of geniuses, this age full of violent developments. Without defying the heavens and welcoming difficulties, how can we stand out from the crowd? How else can we climb to the peak of cultivation? Xiao Chen laughed toward the sky. A heroic spirit was born in his heart. The movements of his hands became slightly faster, deflecting the attacks the three sent at him. I want to see how long you can last. Again. Ji Changkong roared, and dazzling starlight burst around him as he charged Xiao Chen again. From the start of the battle, both sides fought at full force. This was no longer a competition of strength. It was a competition of their perseverance and willpower. Whoever could hold on the longest would not fall. Who would have the last laugh? Duan Muqing's hair fluttered around her face. Her expression did not change. There were no signs of any fluctuations. Her whole body emitted a cold qi. Even though it was bone-chilling, Yuchangsi and Ji Changkong were willing to be close to her. It was hard to imagine how Xiao Chen held on, given that this cold qi was directed at him. It was frigid. However, Xiao Chen had already cultivated to the dragon tendon tiger bone. His body had already experienced a rebirth. The cold qi could not penetrate his meridians. Although it did not feel good, he could endure it. Dang! 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 The battle continued for another hour. Under the sharp attacks, all four of them had wounds of various sizes. However, the weapons in their hands did not stop. Such a high-intensity fight was a great test of their perseverance. Shoo! A fierce flame started burning in Xiao Chen's right eye. Eventually, all of the fire gathered before elongating into a purple arrow. The biggest threat to Xiao Chen was Duan Muqing. So, Xiao Chen launched it at her. Duan Muqing's expression changed slightly. She felt a dangerous aura. She quickly retreated and surrounded herself with a screen of ice. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and ignored her. How damaging could this purple light be? He immediately turned his gaze and attacked Ji Changkong. Xiao Chen had already waited for this opportunity for very long. Of the three, Ji Changkong was the weakest. He could only start looking for a weak point. After Xiao Chen diverted the strongest, Duan Muqing, he broke out of the enclosure of the three and quickly made his move. The moment Duan Muqing left, the cold qi within Xiao Chen's body decreased significantly. His unpredictable movements appeared again. He spun around and stabbed his saber into Ji Changkong's chest. Wukui supporting the heavens. The red and purple petals that filled the air formed a mottled whirlpool and quickly entered Ji Changkong's wound. Bang! Ji Changkong fell back. The purple and red flower petals rapidly took root in his body. A purple and red Wukui tree grew out of his wound. Countless tree branches slowly extended from the tree trunk. After a while, leaves filled the branches. On each of the branches, several strange purple and red Wukui flowers blossomed. Mu Chengshui's expression turned grave. A murderous intent appeared in his eyes. He intended to make use of the opportunity. Mu Chengshui's sword hummed softly. The gentle moonlight shone down, and it carried an overwhelming killing qi as it pierced at Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen currently had his hands full. He could not dodge this attack. In fact, Xiao Chen did not plan to dodge. He merely continued to focus on making hand seals to control the growth of the Wukui tree. The wind from the sword somewhat pained Xiao Chen's cheeks. The tip of the sword was now 10 meters away from him. Boom! A jade pendant on Xiao Chen's chest lit up with resplendent light. A formless shield encased him. This was the secret treasure he had won at the auction. When Yuchangsi's full power attack struck the shield, the barrier reflected 30% of its force back at him. The force knocked him back, and he vomited a mouthful of blood. After the shield withstood the strike, it slowly started to shatter. After Xiao Chen completed his hand seals, he turned and chased after Yuchangsi. The Wukui tree behind Xiao Chen had completely formed. Countless roots extended throughout Ji Chengkong's body and meridians. They locked him in place, causing him enough pain that he wished he was dead. No matter how he struggled, it was useless. Yuchangsi wiped his mouth clear of blood as he watched Xiao Chen leap over. He smiled coldly, and the moonlight on his sword started to ripple. The surrounding space began to blur. As Xiao Chen flew through the air, the distance between him and Yuchangsi appeared infinite. There was no way for him to get near. Now that I used a holy weapon and changed the natural laws to create a small realm, let's see how you break it. There are now more than 1,000 kilometers between us. You can forget about catching me. Yuchangsi's voice resonated throughout the space. It sounded as if he were very close, yet so far away. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and said, I have said it before, as long as you haven't comprehended the natural laws yourself, changing the natural laws is useless in front of absolute power. Listening to the sword, Xiao Chen shouted, and a light flashed on the lunar shadow saber. Its snow-white blade turned pitch black, showing off its sharpness wantonly. It had turned into a true heavenly weapon. Wukui breaks the heavens, can even break the heavens. Your measly natural laws are nothing before it. An ancient divine tree rapidly manifested above Xiao Chen. Thunder roared in the sky above the drill grounds. He exhibited the state of thunder to its limits. Boom! A bolt of lightning descended from the sky. The sound was ear-splitting. The growth of the divine tree completed. A resplendent light appeared on Xiao Chen's saber. The light extended quickly, heading toward Yuchangsi. Screw the natural laws of heaven and earth. With the aid of the state of massacre and the heavenly weapon, everything shall break. The moonlight on Yuchangsi's sword dimmed. The beam of light struck his chest in an instant. It was even faster than the blink of an eye. The crowd in the spectator stands only saw a flash of light. Then, Yuchangsi was thrown into the distant sky, disappearing from everybody's sight. Before Xiao Chen could catch a breath, he immediately felt a cold chi spreading quickly through the drill ground. Duan Muqing had completely dodged the fast purple thunder true fire and currently executed her own sure kill techniques. Boom! 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 The cold chi on the ground quickly gathered and formed a huge ice prison, encasing the entire arena. In an instant, the people outside could only see a thick wall of ice. They could not see what occurred inside. Within the ice prison, a pitch-black saber rested against Duan Muqing's neck. Xiao Chen wiped off the blood from the corner of his mouth and said indifferently, "Give up. I still have one of my Wukui saber techniques that I have not executed yet. You do not stand a chance." The instant the ice prison formed, Xiao Chen executed the Azure Dragon Cloud Soaring Art to its peak and executed the Azure Dragon Tail Whip. Right as Duan Muqing was about to unleash her sure kill technique, he rushed over and placed his saber on her neck. After a moment of silence, the ice-attributed energy in Duan Muqing's hands faded. The ice prison immediately melted. Her white hair returned to black. There were no traces of blood in Duan Muqing's pale complexion. A look of fatigue flashed in her eyes. She said softly, "Actually, from the very start, you had won. Duan Muqing's skills are not up to par. From here on, the grudges between the Duanmu clan and you are at an end." After Duan Muqing spoke, she slowly walked out of the drill grounds. After a while, a figure descended from the sky and landed heavily on the ground. That figure bounced on the ground a few times miserably before stopping. This was Yuchangsi, previously thrown into the sky by the Wukui breaks the heavens. Yuchangsi had already suffered injuries. When he fell from several thousand meters, he sustained further injuries. He could not even speak. Blood obscured his vision, he was in an extremely tragic state. The entire drill grounds fell completely silent. Xiao Chen fought against 3 but still obtained victory. Earlier, he defeated the Holy Land's disciples, then, he defeated the disciples of the various noble clans. From the start, he did not stop to rest. All of his opponents were not only strong, but they were also all outstanding talents of their regions. However, this white-robed bladesman had defeated them all. No one was his match, even when they fought 3 against 1. After his battle, Xiao Chen's name would shake the world. He would become the strongest person in the younger generation of the great Qin nation. Xiao Chen was the true main character of today's event. Even the glory of Leng Liasu, who became a peak inferior grade martial king, paled in comparison. Many people felt excited. Perhaps after many years, they could witness a legend's rise to glory. As Xiao Chen walked, he stepped on the ice in the arena, the shards crunching under his feet. Every step Xiao Chen took gave him a headache. However, he needed to move forward. There were some things he had to clear up with the person laying on the ground. He had to force this person's words from his own mouth. Yuchangsi, who was on the ground, had blurry vision and could not stop coughing. When he heard footsteps, he wanted to struggle to stand. However, a scabbard forced him back to the ground. You once said, "The higher you fly, the harder you will fall." Looking at you now, I do not doubt these words. Thank you for reminding me, I will always remember this. I will never let myself succumb to the danger of falling. When Yuchangsi heard this, he coughed violently. However, he laughed mournfully in his heart. He, how had fallen from the sky, now completely understood the meaning of these words. Perhaps I should not have made enemies with this person. There are some people who are destined to rise. Even if you can pull them down temporarily, you would only become a stepping stone for them, allowing them to fly higher. Xiao Chen managed to defeat all of them. How unexpected. First he defeated the Holy Land disciples with 4 palms. Then he defeated the noble clan heirs. No one can defend against his sharpness. No one within the younger generation is a match for him. Our great Qin nation is the weakest among the 5 nations. This time we might have a demonic genius. After the silence, the crowd in the spectator stands exploded into chatter. They were all excited, their discussions were unending. Only the other side, where Lou Ruyu and the others watched. Lou Ruyu smiled sincerely as she quickly walked over to Xiao Chen. At this point, all the noble clan elders on the platform were sullen. They could not take him down in this fight. This Xiao Chen might be the shadow in their hearts in this life. They had such a talented opponent, merely thinking about it made them fearful, frustrating them. However, the most frustrated person was none other than Song Ke. Currently, he was very depressed. He originally thought that it was a dead end for Xiao Chen. Yet, he had survived. Furthermore, his fame even grew. No, this brat's strength is already sufficient to threaten me. We have a death grudge between us. He will definitely come back and seek revenge. Song Q's expression was hesitant as if he mulled over a difficult decision. I will just kill him. He is currently at his weakest, this is the best opportunity. He is no longer a Heavenly Saber Pavilion disciple. With my status as Peak Master, I can avoid the death penalty. Thinking of this, a murderous intent appeared in Song Q's eyes. As he looked at Lou Ruyu, whose back faced him as she walked, and the defenseless Xiao Chen, he tightly clenched his fist. Die! Song Ke shouted and used his remaining arm as a saber. He carried a sharp killing chi and leapt toward Xiao Chen. When the smiling Lou Ruyu saw the berserk Song Ke, her expression immediately changed. She called out loudly, "Xiao Chen, watch out!" Xiao Chen felt the assault of the killing chi. He wanted to execute the Azure Dragon Cloud soaring art and dodge. However, he discovered that he had run dry of essence. There was nothing left. He felt alarmed. Bang! Lou Ruyu quickly flew over and took the strike for Xiao Chen, a strike powered by Song Q's peak martial king cultivation realm. Pu Si. The difference in strength between an inferior grade martial king and peak martial king was vast. Furthermore, Song Ke had stored power for a long time to execute this strike. Lou Ruyu vomited a mouthful of blood and felt excruciating pain in her chest as she flew back. Xiao Chen's expression suddenly fell. He rushed to catch Lou Ruyu and checked her pulse. He sent in a strand of spiritual sense and discovered her heart vessels had shattered and her life force quickly faded. The situation's sudden change shocked everyone. They did not expect such a development. Xiao Chen, don't be rash. Lou Ruyu collapsed in Xiao Chen's arm. She was frail and pale. It was like a bolt of lightning had struck Xiao Chen's mind. His eyes turned scarlet and the scarlet throne in his sea of consciousness trembled. Scarlet strands of the state of massacre extended out. When Xiao Chen looked back, he discovered that Song Ke was still not willing to let go and rapidly headed for him. He was determined to kill Xiao Chen. Seeking death. Xiao Chen's heart turned cold and killing intent filled his entire body. The Azure Dragon tattoo on his right arm started moving. A horrifying energy accumulated. After a while, that realistic-looking tattoo started to move. A realistic Azure Dragon about 17 or 18 years old, sat beside Feng Shui. A dragon roar shook the earth. This youth was handsome and the sky separated. However, the holy might of an ancient holy beast spread throughout the seniors discussing him. His expression did not massively shifted mid-rush. He was like a silent sword. Song Ke only felt a surging holy might and glanced at the silent like a small mountain weighing on his body. He only felt it was his martial spirit trembled. This youth's talent was only slightly lower than his legs stopped listening to him. At the tea table slightly behind, could react, the Azure Dragon struck. Expressionless gaze scanned his upper body with heavenly saber pavilion as if she searched for someone. He flew back 100 meters. When Ji Chengkong saw Duan, the Azure Dragon circled and returned to Xiao Chen's arm. Miss Duan, it was now very dim. For someone. Only a faint image remained. Duan Muqing retracted her gaze and said indifferently, silent Elder Yan's expression changed greatly when he saw the azure-colored true dragon. Sitting to the side, startled, joined the Azure Dragon martial spirit. That person has not arrived yet. How could it be the Azure Dragon martial spirit? The last time we met him, he did not reveal his moves. The flood dragons are not considered we can verify his identity this time. Something like a close relative but not as powerful. These clans had many outer disciples who died and walked over to the severely injured Song Ke. It was clear that their heads had been taken to the scarlet and his face sullen as he lifted Song Ke. The deaths of these outer disciples did not significantly damage these clans. You are a peak martial king. However, yet they resulted in the fall of these clans' credibility. I have endured you until today, and still, furthermore, you refused to let me go. The few noble clans did not even manage to find a trace of Xiao Chen. Don't kill me. This made them look like a joke to the rest of the world. If you kill me, you will die as well. Song Ke said with a horrified expression. Does anyone have any questions regarding the agreement we made him give up all of his pride? A trace of killing intent flashed in Hua Yunfei's eyes. The first elder Zhang Kai tried to stop him. Relax. No matter what, has killed several elders of my master of the heavenly saber pavilion. We verified his identity. They could not let him die at the hands of an outsider. Will be the first to make a move. Xiao Chen ignored Zhang Kai and simply punched with his right hand, indifferently, crushing Song Q's brain. My mother has ordered me to kill him. Vessels had shattered in place of Xiao Chen. At the very front, regardless of whoever begged for mercy, mockery appeared in his eyes. However, he did it very well. A red light flashed on the platform. It was beside the misty sword toward Xiao Chen with where the Night Spirit Palace's people were. Yuchangsi gently picked up forward and see what happens. Occasionally, he glanced at the empty tea table right as Elder Yan's palm was about to strike Xiao Chen. For a fiery red meteor suddenly descended from the sky. Quietly beside Yuchangsi when looking carefully. Because the Night Spirit Palace was closer to the front than the golden dragon made of a pure did not sit with them. Instead, sensing the danger to enjoy the privileges of the Night Spirit Palace, when he clearly saw what it table on the right side, his expression changed. Subdivine weapon, senior brother, Grand Imperial Spear, like that fellow has not arrived yet. Is the promise to teach him a lesson on my behalf. Elder Yan retreated without hesitation. Right. She moved with incredulous sullen voice and a hazy gaze. The spear tightly followed him. Smiled faintly. Everywhere the copper mirror in the depths of his black hole appeared, tearing space apart. He placed the teacup on the table and said, circling the spear burned fiercely. You have given me 1,000 black hole grow larger stones. I will not take your things for nothing. Why can't I escape from this spear? The person leading the Night Spirit Elder Yan was also their first elder. Dang. He sat in the frontmost Elder Yan at their tea table. A ripple suddenly appeared in Changshui's words. Elder frowned slightly, leading 7 people whether the Reincarnation Palace is allowed to ride the Holy Land's coattails depends on you and Elder Yan and gently used a finger to stop this grand imperial personal vendetta. Space apart so easily. Yuchangsi replied respectfully. I agree radiated from below his feet. However, I am merely helping junior brother's force of this frustration out of demonstrating strong control. At the same time, we continue to heavenly saber pavilion that our Night Spirit Palace snatching back the Grand Imperial Spear. The first elder nodded and said, that I have heard about the inheritor of the Azure Dragon Martial Spirit, Elder Night Spirit who had been saved in the nick of time. It is beneficial to teach this person a lesson. Elder Luo on the road to the heaven viewing platform. I know. Xiao Chen don't have through the crowd with determination. Just leave this matter. He did not know that, before he had even arrived, the heavenly saber had painted a target on his back, who were all hidden, showed themselves. Lou Ruyu looked at the packed crowd and said, Chen's eyes lit up when he saw too many people here. Xiao Chen immediately carried time at this over and said anxiously, let's work together to carve a path through. Please save Ruyu. Xiao Chen had already intended to do so. This packed crowd started to get on his nerves. I owe you a favor. The pair released their energy and shaped it into a conical shape. One of our own. Out of both duty and feelings, ferocious I will save her. In a wide passage appeared in the crowd. This, he relaxed. They ignored the curses and quickly advanced. Martial ant. In an instant, their speed increased by several times. Took out a pill and slid it into Lou Ruyu's smiled and said, we should have done that long ago. Lou Ruyu's fading life force and slowly for Qingyan Peak and obtain a good result. We are still in time. We should ask the Elders Assembly for a flying rank 9 treatment holy medicine. In the future, it will guarantee her through all this trouble. Shen Manjin said calmly 10 minutes later, a strand of gentle finally arrived outside the gates of the drill ground. When the people flashed her golden identity token, they all heaved a sigh of relief. Guarding the gates immediately led the 6 to a secret passage. Xiao Chen, furthermore, you killed my heavenly saber like the disciple led them to the spectator stands like everyone else. According to the sect rules, you should be executed. The secret passage led to the back of the platform. Made the first move, trying to kill his fellow sect mates. Martial Ant Lu, he had committed the same down quickly. The elders have long awaited your arrival. And taking that into consideration, after Lou Ruyu, you are not allowed to take a step into my heavenly saber pavilion again. Do you agree? Before they climbed onto the platform, spoke softly after Lou Ruyu's condition had stabilized. Furthermore, she was not the pavilion master or the one with the highest seniority. After they climbed the long flight of steps, heavier weight than finally arrived on the platform. Stupid. Why haven't you agreed yet? Gazes filled with dangerous intentions directed at him. Do you not see the eyes of the Holy Lands maintaining his calm and ignoring these gazes? Just as Xiao Chen was about to argue, First Elder's voice appeared in his mind. Lou Ruyu said as the cupped her hands in respect to Zhang Kai, ancestral martial ant. Zhang Kai smiled and said, into the heavenly saber pavilion again. The Holy Land's people have not arrived yet. Gently and looked at Elder Luo. Elder Luo, I fully anticipate Yi Chen's performance. The core elder of the Phoenix's Passion Palace scolded immediately brought furiously by transmitting his voice directly to him. Xiao Chen saw a murderous intent gently in the eyes of the Elder Shen is too master, Song K. This is the personal matter of the heavenly saber pavilion. A meaningful glance it has nothing to do with the Phoenix's Passion Palace. Now is not the time to deal with this young pavilion master will head to the Holy Land as previously killing agreed. This person will only offend the entire heavenly was already safe. Xiao Chen completely relaxed, back-faced not Xiao stepping Chen. Into the heavenly like saber pavilion was not the same not returning to the heavenly saber pavilion. It must be that Xiao Chen grew strong enough. It has grown so horrifying away from this place. Thought as he clenched his remaining hand, his promise to hurt his heart. Xiao Chen said when goodbye to everyone and especially thanked Princess Yingyu before he slowly walked out with Xiao Bai. A sharp look appeared in his calm gaze. When he would return after leaving this unexpectedly and uncontrollably erupted. He certainly would return. What's going on? He had to accomplish everything he had promised. The youth was shaken. After Xiao Chen now filled his gaze towards over to Yingyu, smiling. Sword intent would only react like that when it felt danger so much like your grandfather. And you are as domineering as that its master did not suffer any harm. You are too weak. However, this youth could not feel the grand imperial spear in her hand tightly and said indifferently. He stared at the white-robed battle to discover if your words was calm. There were no fluctuations in his emotions. Gently and did not mind the youth's frowns. He could not understand the reason. Go back and tell your grandfather he still lost a little this time. Telling him about it. As Yingyu watched the Phoenix's Passion Palace's felt it was strange as well. She said softly to herself, he examined Xiao Chen carefully as if his gaze did not sharp sword piercing through space. After that, trying to see through Xiao Chen's secrets. Then, the crowd in the drill ground slowly immediately registered a strong mental energy scan of the Holy Land had been utterly decimated. Spiritual sense turned into a sharp saber and that came did not feel any regret. They had witnessed the birth of a legend, quickly transformed into a protective shield, preventing this mental energy from scanning him a second time. The platform also left. At the same time, the spiritually bustling drill ground the direction where the mental energy came from. Even the most glorious occasion will come to its end. This all happened to himself as he led the heavenly saber elders and left. Accomplished it. It was shockingly fast. No one would have guessed that this occasion's the other party had abandoned this stranded mental glorious moment, making it impossible for him to be tracked down. Xiaohei spiritual sense encircled through the air for a while before returning helplessly. Led to the Black Dragon River from the heavenly saber was maintained. This was the only road aside from the Devil Savannah. He felt suspicious. There were many cultivators there. This was the only energy from earlier was on a different level from that of a regular martial king. This had become a place where many cultivators would come and rest. Above could have such ability. This inn was not big. Half-step martial monarchs and above were existences. There was a single building with the kitchen at the moment. There was no point to finding out outside, and a signboard rested by the roadside. Xiao Chen retracted his gaze and ignored it. Good. Out on the other end, when Feng Shuai saw Xiao Chen's traveling cultivators occupied all the rest, he was startled speechless. At the vat of wine outside the inn, a pretty young girl in the other party's reaction to be so fast, years of age, held up a bottle gourd. He knew why his grandson's sword demanded of the owner. Fill my gourd bottle with wine. Use caution if you face him. The owner was an old man more than 50 years old. Of massacre. When he saw the seductive smile on this girl's pure face, it immediately became entranced. That's why it automatically protected recovered his wits after a long moment. Feng Shuai explained to Feng Sen everything he witnessed in the opening of the bottle gourd. Originally, he planned to laser and slowly scooped up the wine. However, when the young girl smelled the fragrant wine, she smiled till her lovely energy was strangely fast. The only result of this was Feng Shuai's discovery of something about the state of massacre. No problem. I will fill it to the brim for Holy Land's people to run business. The crowd at the tea table started chatting you. However, after ladling in wine for so many geniuses to gather like started to murmur to himself, discussing their problems like regarding cultivation was beneficial to everyone. He looked down and saw that the bottle gourd was very sturdy and appeared about 10,000 meters in the sky. At a table to the side, a white-clothed youth looked up and observed carefully. They discovered it was not a wrapped around his forehead and his skin was very fair. Fiery red bird, very handsome. All of the bird's feathers carried a red flame. He nearly spat out boundlessly resplendent. The youth quickly ran over and took the bottle gourd. The temperature in the drill ground of gold and handed it over. It was as if the air had been to continue filling this. This made breathing uncomfortable. This gold is for you. Z. Thank you. A melodious cry resounded in the sky. When the owner saw the gold, his eyes spread its wings. However, and the might of an ancient still muttering to himself throughout the drill ground. It is clearly only a small cultivators in the crowd felt I fill it to the brim. The martial spirits in their body were all smiled bitterly to himself. They felt fear deep within their hearts. That would be strange. Their essence turned chaotic and smashed around magic treasure that I refined, creating pain in their meridians. If you fill it with a pool of water, all the cultivators hurriedly tried to suppress the chaotic essence in their bodies and calm themselves. These trying to control their restless and berserk martial spirits, who had just left the heavenly saber pavilion. The fiery red vermilion bird gently flapped its wings and withdrew its aura. Xiao Chen rode the silver warship and quickly left the boundaries of the heavenly saber pavilion, and the discomfort disappeared. After he spent half a month treating his injuries in a small town, the holy beast, he continued on his journey. What a horrifying pressure. Within the great Qin nation, it only lasted for an instant. There was almost no one who could match up against Xiao Chen. I would not be able to control my own martial spirit. The rest were not worth using his full power. Our essence turned chaotic, and martial spirits went out of control. Their spiritual veins had not changed. People, they will defeat us within one move. The Great Tang Nation, the Great Chu Nation, the Great Sha Nation, and the Great Qin Nation. Of which, the Great Qin Nation was the weakest. The spiritual energy in the Great Qin Nation was also the most sparse. They only had 3 large-scale sects. As for the other 3 nations, each had at least 4 or 5 sects that were not inferior to the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Needless to say, there were more in the Great Jin Nation. Xiao Chen had never limited his goals to the Great Qin Nation. From the very start, he looked on the scale of the entire continent. Hence, he had to travel out of the Great Qin Nation. The Tianwu continent was vast and boundless. Aside from the 5 great nations, there were the mysterious desolate lands, the barbarians who occupied the 100,000 huge mountains in the north, and several small nations that were ruled by some strange ancient tribes. The continent itself was so vast that it could be considered boundless. Not to mention the countless islands in the boundless oceans, the icy continent in the extreme north, and the legendary raging flame abyss from which it was said the sun rose. The world was so large. Most people would not ever see half in their lifetimes. One might be a super genius in their nation, but when one left, they might realize they were merely a drop of water in the ocean. One had to maintain a humble and calm heart, no matter what the world said about their talent or future. In Xiao Chen's eyes, all was in vain. Only when Xiao Chen truly grasped strength would he be satisfied. Regardless of when, he could not allow the world to influence his heart. He would not worry, doubt, fear, or feel prideful. Didn't I tell you before? You are not allowed to use this bottle gourd for buying wine. Why are you so disobedient? Xiao Chen gently smacked Xiao Bai's head as he scolded her. Xiao Bai lowered her head. She felt somewhat wronged as she said, but the other bottle gourds are really small. I empty them after 2 mouthfuls. Xiao Chen shook his head helplessly. It was just his luck to meet this girl who loved drinking. He felt really helpless. He handed the bottle gourd back to Xiao Bai and said, "No more next times. This time, I will punish you by not letting you drink until nightfall." Xiao Bai happily received the bottle gourd and tied it to her waist. She nodded and said seriously, "Xiao Bai will not drink. Xiao Bai guarantees it." Xiao Chen left money for the food on the table. Then, he walked toward the road with Xiao Bai. Not long after Xiao Chen left, a few cultivators at another table chatted with each other. One of them said, "The youth earlier, he seemed to be the recently famous white-robed bladesman, Xiao Chen. His purpose is not the same as ours, right, targeting the treasure." Another person laughed and said, "You are overthinking this. Wearing white robes and tying a blue strip of cloth on the head is a norm for bladesmen now. Which bladesman is not dressed like that at the moment?" A third person chimed in, "Indeed. Since the day of that fight in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, which bladesman does not dress like this? I can only say that Xiao Chen is too famous, there are too many people following his style. Don't overthink this. Perhaps I really did overthink this. There are too many white-robed bladesmen wearing a strip of blue cloth on their heads. Let's quickly finish eating and continue our journey, the first person who spoke concluded. High in the sky, a silver warship quickly advanced against the strong winds in the clouds. Xiao Chen was in the ship's hold carefully examining a map. There were detailed drawings of topography of the Zaihe province and the seas near it. There were detailed marks for every river, mountain, town, and city. A small map flickering with a spiritual light sat next to the massive map. This was the treasure map that Xiao Chen had previously obtained. According to the fatty, the location of the treasure was on an island at sea. Surging waves battered the island throughout the year. Even martial monarchs experts could not reach it. In the past, a martial sage had changed the natural laws around the island. Even after 1,000 years, the altered natural laws had not recovered. Every 2 years, there would be a brief respite. The huge waves would recede significantly, allowing martial kings a chance to enter. Having calculated the time carefully, Xiao Chen realized that now was coincidentally about the time people could travel to the island. When Xiao Chen left the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, he did not have a definitive destination. Since he had this treasure map, he should give it a try. Perhaps he could take advantage of a fortuitous encounter. After Xiao Chen compared the maps, he muttered, "It looks like the river on the treasure map is really the Black Dragon River in Zaihe province. The sea route marked by the red line is probably the way to the island." Xiao Bai sat at the stern of the warship. She occasionally snuck sips from her bottle gourd when she saw Xiao Chen fully focused. Her flushed face was very attractive. Xiao Chen saw all this clearly with his spiritual sense. However, he only smiled helplessly. He picked up the map flickering with spiritual light and examined it carefully for a long time. Xiao Chen's finger slowly moved around the treasure map until it stopped it at the island nearest to the treasure. This island was the Greenwind Island. The Greenwind Island was about 2 times the size of Zaihe City. It was an extremely famous island that people would visit when heading into the Boundless Sea. All merchant ships that wished to head to the Boundless Sea would stop at this island, making a final restock of their supplies before the long journey. Xiao Bai, stop sneaking in sips. It's time to disembark, Xiao Chen said gently, carefully putting away the map. Xiao Bai's pretty face slightly flushed as she stood. She nodded gently and smiled, all right. To reach the Greenwind Island, they had to catch a ride on one of the merchant ships. If Xiao Chen controlled the silver warship for such a long distance, it would be a great drain on his spirit and body. Xiao Chen put Xiao Bai back in the spirit blood jade and retrieved the silver warship into his right eye. Then, he quickly fell from the sky. Soon, a small city appeared in his vision. That small city was the end of the road in the desolate wilderness. Because there was a harbor to the Black Dragon River near, even though the city was small, it bustled, people filled every space. Xiao Chen landed on the ground firmly. He paid the entrance toll before heading to the harbor adjoining the city. There were many huge merchant ships in the harbor. After Xiao Chen asked around and found a ship preparing to head for the Boundless Sea, he immediately rushed over. "So, you are going to Greenwind Island. The fee is 100 inferior grade spirit stones, non-negotiable," the person on the bow who negotiated with Xiao Chen said. "Strange. Why is it so expensive? I remember the fee to ride the merchant ships in the past being only a few gold. Now, it's 100 spirit stones." Xiao Chen had the 100 spirit stones to spare. However, he did not want to waste them foolishly. He was about to find another ship to ask. The fellow on the ship laughed and said, Don't bother looking elsewhere, the other merchant ships are all offering the same price. Even if you only want to reach the next harbor, it is still the same price. When things happened out of the ordinary, something strange must be going on. Xiao Chen felt suspicious and stopped. He took out 150 spirit stones and said, "The remaining 50 spirit stones are a reward. Tell me why the prices are so high." When the fellow saw the extra 50 inferior grade spirit stones, a smile immediately filled his face. He explained, "It's all because of that treasure map passed down in the Devil Savannah." According to rumors, a fatty had managed to obtain this map in the Devil Savannah. He had taken it to the big auction house in the ancient desolate land and earned a large sum. Then, he made 1,000 copies and sold them. This treasure map has now become common. The first person who bought it has felt very wronged. Not only those from our Great Qin nation, but many cultivators from the Great Tang nation, Great Xia nation, and Great Chu nation also obtained the map. There are many people going to the Greenwind island. After that person said this, Xiao Chen understood what was going on as well. He smiled to himself, "It looks like the treasure map that I saw as precious has already become common." However, with the fatty's character, this is definitely possible of him. After he lost so much in the Devil Savannah, he would try to find a way to recoup his losses. After that, Xiao Chen followed that fellow and boarded the ship, going to the deck. He immediately felt countless strong auras. He saw about 100 cultivators seated on the deck. About half of them were peak martial saints, the remaining were martial kings. Half the martial kings were medial grade martial kings, and a small portion was superior grade martial kings. Xiao Chen swept through the place with his spiritual sense and discovered that there was one peak superior grade martial king. He had hidden his aura and quietly mingled with the crowd. It looks like it was as that fellow said. Everyone has discovered the secret of the treasure map. Anyone who with some strength will try their luck. It's yet another bladesman imitating Xiao Chen. Why do the youths of these days enjoy imitating others so much? Did they think that they will become experts by wearing white robes and a blue strip of cloth? Several cultivators mocked Xiao Chen when they saw him bored. Xiao Chen looked around and discovered there were indeed many cultivators dressed similarly. They all wore white robes with a saber hanging at their waist and a blue strip of cloth around their foreheads. Xiao Chen could only ignore these people. Such a situation was acceptable to him, it was better than being recognized. Xiao Chen smiled gently and signaled that person to come to the ship's hold. Then he said, "Help me prepare a top-notch double room, the bigger, the better." Young hero, this must be your first time hitching a ride on ship. We are not a passenger ship but a merchant ship, so. Before that person finished, Xiao Chen tossed him 1,000 inferior grade spirit stones. Then, he took out another 100 spirit stones and said, "The bigger pile is for your boss. The smaller one is for you." That person immediately smiled and said, "Young hero is very clear on the system. With spirit stones, everything becomes easy to manage. A double room, right? I will give you the largest. Wait for a while." Xiao Chen was very clear that there were no empty rooms on the merchant shop. Aside from making great contributions to the merchant ship, he could only use spirit stones to establish a relationship. Inferior grade spirit stones were no longer useful for Xiao Chen's cultivation. He could only use them to recover some essence, he did not mind spending them. Not long later, that person came running over and guided Xiao Chen to the second floor, showing him to a large guest room. "Young hero, if you have any further instructions, just tell me. My humble self is ready to serve you at any time." This person had already started to see Xiao Chen as the heir of some big clan and tried to benefit as much as he could. Xiao Chen smiled faintly, he knew what that person thought. He handed over 10 inferior grade spirit stones and said, "You can take your leave first. If there are any matters, I will call you. Don't interrupt me if I do not call you." After that person took the spirit stones, he happily took his leave. Xiao Chen closed the door and immediately released the stifled Xiao Bai. There was more than enough space for 2 people. Xiao Chen instructed Xiao Bai to not run about before taking out a medial grade spirit stone. Then, he sat cross-legged and entered a state of cultivation. He prepared to make a breakthrough to superior grade martial saint. After the continuous battles in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion, within the Qi whirlpool in Xiao Chen's dantian, the purple essence liquid stirred restlessly. This signaled that he could reach a breakthrough soon. Furthermore, with his recent cultivation, Xiao Chen was very close to becoming a superior grade martial saint. He just needed some time before he could smoothly become a superior grade martial saint. That huge fight gave Xiao Chen a better understanding of his own strength. Xiao Chen's current combat prowess lay between peak medial grade martial king and superior grade martial king. He could defeat ordinary martial kings and could hold his own against superior grade martial kings. However, Xiao Chen was definitely not a match for a peak superior grade martial king. If he ran into one, he could only do his best to escape. As for within the martial saint realm, Xiao Chen was undefeatable. Xiao Chen even had the confidence of defeating the core disciples from the Holy Land. The harbor they occupied was somewhere between the source of the river and the ocean. There was still a distance to the mouth of the river. Furthermore, the merchant ship could not move at full speed while in the river. Hence, it moved slowly. Xiao Chen did not leave his room. Aside from eating, he spent all his time cultivating. The world outside the Heavenly Saber Pavilion had very sparse spiritual energy. Xiao Chen had to use 1 medial grade spirit stone every day. Xiao Chen did not lack spirit stones. He exchanged his 30,000 odd contribution points for 1,000 odd medial grade spirit stones. In addition to what he had obtained from selling the demonic cores, he now had more than 9,000 spirit stones. As long as Xiao Chen could raise his cultivation speed, he did not feel any heartache over it. 2 months later, the purple Qi whirlpool in Xiao Chen's body suddenly spun very quickly. All of the spiritual energy contained in the medial grade spirit stone rapidly poured into his body. Ti-da. Ti-da. Drops of purple essence liquid dripped continuously from the Qi whirlpool. Soon, it completely filled the Qi whirlpool. All of the pores in Xiao Chen's body, all his flesh and bone, felt bloated. After a while, the Qi whirlpool exploded, and this dantian turned chaotic. Strong winds blew from Xiao Chen. Air currents instantly filled the room, forming a miniature tornado. A very comfortable feeling spread throughout Xiao Chen's body. The essence that circulated in his meridians became denser and purer. Have I broken through? With a thought from Xiao Chen, he sent his consciousness into his dantian. He saw that the size of the Qi whirlpool had at least doubled. The purple essence liquid, which previously filled the Qi whirlpool, barely filled half of it. Xiao Chen had successfully broken through. After 4 months, he finally advanced from peak medial grade martial saint to superior grade martial saint. Xiao Chen revealed a faint smile. He circulated the purple thunder divine incantation. The purple essence immediately flowed in a small cycle in his 9 major meridians. After that, the essence completed a great cycle. Several dozen new minor meridians opened along the major meridians. One of these was the minor meridian Xiao Chen needed to cultivate the 6th layer of the purple thunder divine incantation. The more minor meridians there were, the more essence Xiao Chen would obtain from completing a great cycle. However, the time required to complete a great cycle would grow longer. After 1 hour, the purple essence finally completely a great cycle in all the minor meridians. The essence in the 9 major meridians gathered into a trickle and flowed into the purple qi whirlpool. Xiao Chen only stopped after he almost filled the qi whirlpool. He only needed to complete another great cycle before he could fill it. However, Xiao Chen did not continue circulating his cultivation technique. 2 purple lights flashed in his eye, revealing his sharpness. Elder brother Xiao Chen, you became stronger again, Xiao Bai said happily as she stood by the side. Xiao Chen waved his hand, and all of the remnant purple energy in the air was absorbed into his body. He got up and smiled faintly. Yes. I guess you must feel stifled after not going out for a month. Xiao Bai said excitedly. Great, I have yet to see what the Black Dragon River looks like. They descended the staircase and arrived at the deck, one after another. At this moment, the sun was just rising. The faint light resulted in a golden reflection on the surface of the water. The sky had just brightened. Many cultivators on the deck walked along the sides of the ship. They were in groups of 2 or 3 as they chatted. After not emerging for more than a month, when Xiao Chen felt the breeze from the river, he felt relaxed and refreshing, improving his spirit. There were many merchant ships on the vast river. Aside from the one Xiao Chen occupied, there were several larger ships. After traveling for half a day, a huge tributary appeared. A large number of the merchant ships steered into this tributary. Xiao Chen had examined the map before and knew that this tributary led to the most chaotic place of the continent, the ancient desolate land. The ancient desolate land was very large. It was about half the size of the Great Qin nation. When including the deserted areas, it was the same size as the Great Qin nation. The center of the ancient desolate land was where the Tianwu dynasty's capital had sat long ago. Once, the most bustling city on the continent. Unfortunately, after the Tianwu dynasty was destroyed, the dragon vein that occupied by the Tianwu emperor split into 9. It became an extremely dangerous place. Even though the spiritual energy in the ancient desolate land was very dense, no nation would build their capital there. Xiao Chen collected his thoughts. Since they had arrived here, they were not far from the sea. Soon, the merchant ship would leave the Tianwu continent completely and arrive at sea. We are about to arrive at the Thunder Emperor Valley. After we pass the Thunder Emperor Valley, we will leave the Tianwu continent, a cultivator said suddenly. Another cultivator sighed. Since the Thunder Emperor, no peak expert has appeared from the Great Qin nation. They have really declined since then. I wonder if in another 1,000 years, will anyone reach the same glory as the Thunder Emperor again. No long ago, there was that bladesman that appeared in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion. Maybe he can achieve the same level of glory as the Thunder Emperor. He is the only person in the past 100 years to defeat so many noble clan geniuses in a short period. There are many geniuses in this age. When things reach an extreme, they can only move in the opposite direction. The continent that had been silent for 1,000 years will rise again in this vast world. Just within the Great Qin nation, the talent of those noble clan geniuses is not weak. There is still Leng Liasu who became a martial king at 17, Chu Chaoyun who has not completely revealed his true strength, and a few military geniuses in the imperial capital who have spent their life killing in the battleground. This age is no inferior to that of 1,000 years ago. As for the experts from the other nations, there are many more. Just the ones I know who are no weaker than Xiao Chen number at least 100. Furthermore, this is not including those geniuses in the Great Jin nation. Naturally, we cannot include the geniuses of the Great Jin nation. They are from a completely different world. How can we compare? Maybe we can see some of these geniuses on Greenwind Island. According to rumor, some of the other nations also have the Devil Savannah's treasure map. Someone on the ship shifted the conversation to the Thunder Emperor. Instantly, the entire deck became very lively. The cultivators with extensive experience started discussing the geniuses of every nation. Xiao Chen felt interested and perked his ears up to listen, gaining knowledge from their words. 1,000 years ago, when the Thunder Emperor existed, geniuses filled every nation. There were many capable cultivators. Since the Tianwu dynasty was destroyed, this was the first peak in the world of cultivators. There were many dazzling genius cultivators and many more emerging. The Thunder Emperor rose to fame in such an environment. The Thunder Emperor swept through all of the geniuses under the heavens before eventually becoming one of the people standing at the peak. After the Thunder Emperor fell, that glorious period slowly declined. The world of cultivators went downhill. The number of peak cultivators decreased. The geniuses were no longer as dazzling as those in the past. However, now, there seemed to be signs of growth again. It was like the seeds of a glorious era slowly sprouted. Soon, the rising sun had reached its apex, and the sky became bright and intense. The silhouette of a grand ravine appeared in the distance. Everyone respectfully fell silent. Reverence filled their gazes as they looked at the ravine in the distance. The ravine was several thousand meters tall, climbing on either side of the Black Dragon River. They were like two swords piercing the sky. Clouds shrouded their summits. When the merchant ship arrived at the ravine, it slowed. After it entered the ravine, the sky immediately turned dark. All the cultivators on the deck became totally silent. Only the sound of the waves could be heard on the quiet river. It even seemed like everyone stopped breathing. What's going on? Xiao Chen looked suspiciously at the two sides of the ravine. With a quick glance, he was completely stunned. There was a huge sculpture of a person on the vast towering ravine. The carving was very lifelike. His expression was resolute. He wore tight robes and had a sword hanging at his waist as he gazed at the distant sea. The sculpture was carved along the ravine. It was 1,000 meters tall. It looked like it could soar into the sky and felt very grand. When Xiao Chen thought about the name, Thunder Emperor Valley, he immediately guessed this sculpture's identity. Rumble. Suddenly, a continuous string of thunder crackled in the clear sky above. When Xiao Chen looked up, dark clouds had filled the sky. It sounded like a huge army marching. The winds blew wildly, and occasionally, bolts of lightning would streak across the sky. A berserkwheel of thunder reverberated in the ravine. This caused everything to feel a horrifying pressure. It was like the heavenly thunders would smite them, causing their souls to dissipate and die without a complete corpse. Xiao Bai looked at the horrifying electricity in the sky and remembered the electric light that appeared when she had changed forms. She was scared pale and hugged Xiao Chen's arms, refusing to let go. Elder brother Xiao Chen, Xiao Bai is scared. When Xiao Chen felt Xiao Bai trembling, he gently placed his hand on Xiao Bai's mouth. He said softly, "Don't be afraid, don't say anything." That was the will of thunder, the purest state of thunder. Even after 1,000 years, it still inspired fear, making people too afraid to move. No wonder all the cultivators on deck did not dare speak moment they entered the ravine. They were all afraid that they would accidentally offend this will of thunder and would receive punishment. Xiao Chen looked into the sky and felt a strange familiarity with the boundless thunderclouds. The lunar shadow saber hanging at his waist started to tremble relentlessly. The lunar shadow saber felt excited as if it would jump out at any moment. Xiao Chen held it down, preventing the others from witnessing the strange sight. "Ao Jiao, did you feel it as well?" Xiao Chen wondered silently. He could feel an immeasurable distance between the Thunder Emperor and himself from this supreme will of thunder. The will from 1,000 years ago was unexpectedly still so strong. If Xiao Chen faced the Thunder Emperor at his peak, he did not know if he would even have the courage to stand straight. The ravine was very dark. The merchant ship seemed to have traveled for a very long time in there. The moment it left the ravine, sunlight shone on everyone again. Everyone present heaved a sigh of relief. Cold sweat filled their backs. When they looked back at the dark ravine, they all felt a lingering fear. Xiao Chen let go of Xiao Bai and said, "Xiao Bai, don't be afraid anymore. We have passed it." Color restored to Xiao Bai's face. She reluctantly left Xiao Chen's embrace and said, "Xiao Bai's fear vanished long ago. Elder brother Xiao Chen's embrace is the safest place." How strange. There were no deaths or injuries this time. "This is the first time I have seen this happen despite going through the Thunder Emperor Valley," said an older martial king on the deck. Another old man chimed in as well. "Indeed, I felt that it was strange as well. It looked like the Thunder Emperor Valley is calmer than usual. I could clearly feel someone resisting that will. However, the Thunder Emperor did not punish him." Xiao Cheng was startled. Could it be because of him, or Ao Zhao? Some of the younger cultivators were confused. They asked, "Senior, what's going on? Can you explain?" The first old man who spoke said, "The Thunder Emperor Valley is also known as the Valley of Life and Death. Every time a ship passes through this valley, cultivators will usually die or sustain injuries. Exceptions are very rare." "Why?" The old man smiled faintly. "This is because someone always resists the will of thunder. In the past, there was even a strong martial monarch who tried to snatch away this will of thunder. There was only one result for everyone: death. As long as one has any wild thoughts or intentions to resist, the will of thunder will, at least, injure them. If they resist stubbornly, they will definitely die. Regardless of how high their cultivation is, this is an unchangeable result. Maybe only the sages could attempt this." When the cultivators on the deck that had carelessly resisted the will of thunder heard this, they felt afraid. "Is the Thunder Emperor that strong? He has been dead for 1,000 years, why has his will of thunder not faded yet? Furthermore, it is still so mighty," these young cultivators asked. The old man's words had excited them. The old man smoothed his beard and laughed. He said, "There are 7 kinds of energy. The tyrannical lightning attribute is the most berserk and has the high attacking power. It is also the most difficult to cultivate. This is because lightning represents the punishment of the heavenly Taoes of the natural world. Following the same principle, the state of thunder and will of thunder are the hardest to comprehend. The Thunder Emperor comprehended the will of thunder into an immortal will of thunder. It is now no longer inferior to the heavenly Taoes. With such strong attacking power, even the older martial emperor experts whose cultivation was higher than the Thunder Emperor did not dare reveal their sharpness. Ha ha. Fighting him was the equivalent of going through a lightning calamity. Who would be so bored to get themselves into such trouble?" The old man spoke frankly with assurance. It was clear that he traveled extensively and had seen many things. He spoke of all the achievements of the Thunder Emperor left in the continent. This made the cultivators on the deck yearn for such power. They imagined themselves as that glorious Thunder Emperor, punishing deities and exterminating demons, trampling over geniuses and climbing to the peak of the world. What's with the sculpture in the ravine? It was so huge, it almost spans across the entire ravine. This cannot be accomplished without having at least 1,000 people. However, if there were several thousand, how could they have coordinated perfectly to make this almost perfect sculpture? When someone finally brought up the topic of the sculpture, the old man smiled. "If I told you that this sculpture was formed naturally, will you believe me?" "How is that possible?" All the young cultivators shook their heads. When the old man heard this, he laughed. "All of you young people have pretty good talent. You are all peak superior grade martial saints in your mid-20s. However, you are all still too weak if you want to get your hands on the treasure." The other old man, who was a superior grade martial king, said indifferently, "In the future, if you have the chance to go to the ancient desolate land, you should go see the sculpture of the first generation Tianwu Emperor. Then, you will know the truth. Indeed, you young people are still too inexperienced. You will meet many experts from other nations on this treasure hunt. By then, even staying alive will challenge you, another old martial king said. Also, don't think that by dressing up like that, you are the white-robed bladesman. How juvenile. Someone brought up this topic again. The bladesmen wearing white robes and blue strips of clothes felt somewhat embarrassed when they heard this. They did not know what to say. The topic of discussion slowly returned to everyone's destination. The older cultivators said things to discourage these youths. Actually, even when these people were reminded of the experts of the other nations, they were still restless. They would probably die without realizing the cause. However, these old people had good intentions. As for this group of youths, very few could calm their restless hearts. The old men had already done their part. It was not for them to worry about the youths anymore. The words of these old men had opened Xiao Chen's eyes. This was especially true for the stories of the Thunder Emperor. It gave him a better understanding of this legendary man. While on the deck, Xiao Chen had split his attention and paid attention to the peak superior grade martial king hiding his aura. There were many cultivators seated on the deck. They were quietly trying to appreciate the will of thunder they had just experienced. These were lightning-attributed cultivators. The immortal will of thunder the Thunder Emperor left behind could greatly benefit lightning-attributed cultivators. It would, more or less, aid them in advancing their states, or could help comprehend the state of thunder. Of all these cultivators, there was an old man dressed in gray robes. He looked ordinary like a typical old man. His aura was that of a superior grade martial king. There were many of such old men. It was not surprising that he was a superior grade martial king at his age. However, Xiao Chen could clearly feel that this person was a peak superior grade martial king. He was a step shy of becoming a half-step martial monarch. He was very strong. This person was neither silent nor boasting about his past accomplishments. When a topic he felt was interesting popped up, he would input his ordinary suggestion, not attracting anyone's attention. If Xiao Chen's spiritual sense were not sharp, he would not have discovered him. When looking at the surface, he would not have realized he was a peak martial king expert. This person is extremely dangerous. Xiao Chen kept an eye on him. The biting dog was never the loudest barking. At this moment, the merchant ship had completely left the Tianwu continent. The Thunder Emperor Valley slowly disappeared from their sight. They slowly pulled further away from the continent. There were many merchant ships slowly emerging from the ravine's entrance. Xiao Chen withdrew his gaze and ignored the chatting crowd on the deck. He directly made his way to the bow of the ship and gazed at the distant sea. When Xiao Chen looked, all he saw was the boundless sea. The sea was calm, without waves. The sky was clear, and flocks of birds occasionally flew by. The sea was currently very gentle. When standing in front of the calm sea, it seemed very vast, broadening one's mind. The huge ship quickly moved to the sea. Now that it was on the sea, there was nothing to worry about. They could move at full speed. Xiao Chen muttered, "Is this the boundless sea? It is indeed boundless. Chances are, even if one spent their whole life, they could not explore every inch of it. Ha ha. This is not the boundless sea. This is merely the sea near the coast of the Tianwu continent. Only after passing the Greenwind island will one arrive at the edge of the boundless sea. Even so, that is merely the shallow waters. The true depths of the sea are even further out." A drawn-out voice suddenly entered Xiao Chen's ears. When Xiao Chen turned, he discovered that it was the peak martial king that he had paid attention to. He had walked over without Xiao Chen realizing it. Xiao Chen was mildly startled. His expression did not change as he smiled faintly. "Old senior, you seem very experienced. You must have a good understanding of the boundless sea. Will you tell this junior about it?" The old man smiled gently and said, I'm not worthy of being called old senior. The world of cultivators respects the strong and not age. This old sir is Wu Shangxuan. If little brother does not mind, you can just call me Old Wu. Old Wu, please explain it to me, Xiao Chen softly requested. He really wanted to know about the boundless sea. So, he did not mind chatting with him. Wu Shangxuan looked towards the vast sea and said sullenly, there are a total of 4 regions in the boundless seas, the East Sea, West Sea, South Sea, and the North Sea. The merchant ship we are on is going to the East Sea. The true boundless sea is also separated into the deep sea and shallow sea. The only place humans have a grasp of is the shallow sea. As for the deep sea, it is too mysterious. This old me does not understand much about it. In the shallow sea of every region, there are countless islands and strong sects. Aside from the East Sea, the shallow seas of the other 3 regions each have a ruling sect. So, they are relatively stable. Xiao Chen pondered for a while before asking, then how does the strength of the sects in the boundless seas compare to the sects in my great Qin nation? If comparing to the shallow sea of the East Sea, you can barely qualify as a second-rate power. However, the Heavenly Saber Pavilion was once considered a first-rate power. However, it is merely second-rate now. Perhaps if you include the Heavenly Craft Manor, its standing would be slightly better. Xiao Chen was somewhat surprised. The Heavenly Craft Manor forges weapons. Could they be stronger than the Heavenly Saber Pavilion? What do you mean? Ha ha. If you explore the world, you will discover that the Heavenly Craft Manor has forged many of the spirit weapons available in the continent. This is also clear in the Great Jin Nation. Regarding fame, the 3 great sects are not as famous as the Heavenly Craft Manor. Think about it carefully. If such a sect that earns so much money did not have a certain level of power, why did the royal courts or the other sects try to swallow them up? Xiao Chen had not considered this aspect. Unless they had strong backing, there could only be one other reason. The Heavenly Craft Manor also had their own strong hidden force. Wu Shangxuan suddenly paused. Then, he said, White-robed bladesman, you are so interested in the powers of the boundless sea. Could it be that, aside from going to Greenwind Island, you are interested in going to the boundless sea? Xiao Chen was slightly stunned. He smiled and said, Old Wu is joking. What? White-robed bladesman? I merely wear white robes. Don't deny it. While you observed me, why would I not observe you as well? Wu Shangxuan asked calmly as he looked into the distance. Xiao Chen's heart sank. It looked like this person had discovered his identity. Otherwise, he would not have come over and started a conversation without any reason. Wu Shangxuan continued, you don't have to worry. The old me came to look for you because I wanted to discuss the matters of the Savannah King's treasure. I have been to that island twice, and this is my 3rd time. Xiao Chen was surprised that Wu Shangxuan already been to the island twice. For him to return safely twice, he must possess more strength than Xiao Chen had thought. The first time this old man went there, I obtained 3,000 medial grade spirit stones, 2 secret treasures, and 2 bottles of rank 7 pills. The second time, I walked away with 5,000 medial grade spirit stones, 3 secret treasures, and 1 bottle of rank 8 pills before obtaining my current cultivation. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and said, it looks like old Wu has made ample preparations. You should gain a great harvest. Difficult. Wu Shangxuan sighed softly. I don't know which damn fatty distributed the treasure map. Now, aside from the cultivators from the Great Jin Nation, the cultivators from the 4 great nations with some strength will all rush to the island. Fortuitous encounters were hard to come by. The treasure left by the Savannah King was no doubt a great fortuitous encounter. It was very tempting. It would not be odd if there were many heading there as well. It was likely that most of the cultivators, if not all, on the other merchant ships also hunted the Savannah King's treasure. However, Based on Wu Shengxuan's expression, it looked like he still had something to say. Xiao Chen thought for a while before saying, "Senior, just tell me what you have on your mind." Wu Shengxuan laughed when he heard this. "The youths today are really direct. This old man has said too much already. Actually, I wanted to work with you to try to obtain the treasures the Savannah King left behind." To Xiao Chen, working with Wu Shengxuan would be a great help. Wu Shengxuan had been to the island where the treasures were twice in the past. He was much more familiar with the situation on the island than others. He could save time when facing a lot of challenges. However, this was someone who Xiao Chen did not know. Furthermore, the other party was stronger than him. Wu Shengxuan would be in the dominant position. If he obtained something good, and Wu Shengxuan wanted to kill him for it, he would be helpless against him. "I'm sorry, I'm used to being alone. I'm afraid I cannot accept Senior's kind intentions." Even if there were more benefits, Xiao Chen would not agree. There was too much risk. Then, Wu Shengxuan made promises of several more benefits, doing his best to convince Xiao Chen to work with him. However, Xiao Chen was not moved. He would not agree regardless of what was promised. "Ha ha. Since littler brother does not agree, then never mind. When we meet each other again in the future, we will still be friends. This old me shall take my leave first." A subtle, bitter resentment flashed in Wu Shengxuan's eyes as he smiled gently. Xiao Chen's eyes were very sharp. He noticed this bitter resentment. This future made him more resolute regarding his decision. This old man was definitely not a good person. However, if Wu Shengxuan wanted to play some trick, Xiao Chen was not a good person to offend. Even if Xiao Chen could not kill him, he could make him suffer. Elder brother Xiao Chen, that person from earlier, was very hypocritical. Xiao Bao could clearly feel his killing qi. Yet, he smiled so happily. Xiao Bai said softly as she walked over. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and said, "Just ignore him. Don't come out during these few days. This person is not easy to deal with." Boom. 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 Just at this moment, strong waves suddenly appeared on the calm sea. The waves were over 100 meters tall. The huge merchant ship shook under the bombardment. The situation's sudden change shocked the cultivators on the deck. They nearly fell to the ground. "What's going on? We are still close to the continent. There are very few storms during this season. Why did such huge waves appear so suddenly?" Several cultivators who had traveled across the sea frequently said suspiciously. The ship still shook, but the cultivators had already recovered their wits. After they circulated their essence, they could barely maintain their balance. Xiao Chen stood as if glued to the deck. Despite how strongly the merchant ship shook, he did not move. He supported Xiao Bai and extended his spiritual sense off in the distance. With the increase of Xiao Chen's cultivation, his spiritual sense could now cover an area of 5,000 meters. If he used it in a straight line, he could see the situation 10,000 meters away. Soon, Xiao Chen understood what was going on. There were two warships engaged in an intense battle about 8,000 meters ahead. Ancient demonic energy cannons fired at each other, sending out energy shells and not holding back anything. Resplendent lights filled the sky. The aftermath of the battle resulted in a huge storm, stirring up the huge waves moving out across the sea. The aftermath of the battle is so strong. Each warship is outfitted with at least 100 ancient demonic energy cannons. No wonder the aftermath still had such might after 10,000 meters. Xiao Chen withdrew his spiritual sense. He thought to himself with mild shock, that blue warship seems to have the banner of the Golden Rock Merchant Association. Golden Rock Merchant Association, isn't that the merchant association of Jin Dabao's clan? The other warship was pure black and had a banner at the bow of the ship. There was a sinister hydra embroidered on the flag with open jaws. There were spherical shields of light around both warships. They defended against the energy shells they fired at each other. They were about equally matched. At this rate, the two warships might sink at the same time. Dong. 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 A group of people came out of the merchant ship's hold. It was the captain and the guards of the ship. Clearly, the strange waves had startled them. The captain of the merchant ship was a middle-aged man. He was tall and appeared impressive. He wore yellow robes with golden threads. His aura flourished. He was actually a superior-grade martial king. There were 8 other guards near the captain. They were all martial kings and no more than 40. This was the peak of a human's life. The drive and sharpness of such martial kings were much stronger than the old martial kings on the deck. If they fought each other, the old men's essence would not last as long. This was because the young martial king's chi and blood were in excess, their sharpness was still present. Hence, their odds of victory were higher. The captain looked at the rough sea and frowned. He said to a person beside him, "Lu Sheng, your perception is comparable to a half-step martial monarch. Help me see what's going on." The cultivator known as Lu Sheng nodded. He walked to the bow and closed his eyes. His body emitted ripples of blue light. The light infused into the water and extended forward. This person's martial spirit should be special. Furthermore, he has comprehended the state of water. Hence, his perception is the equivalent of a half-step martial monarch, Xiao Chen thought. Captain, it is the Black Dragon Group's Hydra warship fighting the Golden Rock Merchant Association's Nether River warship, Lu Sheng said softly as he opened his eyes. This is the coastal region. Why are there ships from the Black Dragon Group? Did they get it wrong? Some of the older martial kings on the deck exclaimed in shock. Lu Sheng walked over and said, "Captain, should we go around?" The captain frowned heavily and muttered to himself for a while. Then, he asked, "Are you sure there are only 2 warships? Are there any other merchant ships or passenger ships?" Lu Sheng nodded and said, "I did not see any of the Golden Rock Merchant Association's merchant ships or passenger ships with 50 kilometers. There are only the 2 warships fighting." The captain's expression relaxed. He said, "In that case, ignore them. Raise the banner of the Merchant Association and let's continue on our way." The Black Dragon Group normally operates in the shallow seas of the 4 regions. Why are they in the coastal seas? This is strange. The Golden Rock Merchant Association's warship is there as well. Don't they normally operate in the shallow seas of the North Sea? Why did they come to the west? Perhaps they came for the sake of the treasure left by the Savannah King. If that is true, our chances have grown slimmer. When the many cultivators on the deck thought of this possibility, their expressions all changed. The Savannah King's treasure had attracted many cultivators from 4 great nations. Now that the Golden Rock Merchant Association and Black Dragon Group participated in this, the chances of them running into a fortuitous encounter had lessened. Wu Shengshuan's expression became very unsightly as well. He glanced at Xiao Chen, and a strange light appeared on his face. It was like a venomous snake flicking its forked tongue. The merchant ship raised their Merchant Association banner and moved at full speed. After 2 hours, they drew near to the core of the battle. The waves became more ferocious. They were now at least 200 meters tall. It was very frightening. When the resplendent energy shells moved across the surface of the sea, they created a surging wall of water on either side, making the roaring sea look even more chaotic. How wasteful. One shot from the ancient demonic energy cannon would exhaust 1,000 inferior-grade spirit stones. They make it seem like spirit stones are not valuable, some cultivators on the deck sighed. When the 2 warships saw the banner raised by the merchant ship, they ceased fire at the same time. The rough surging sea slowly calmed after a long moment. The merchant ship sailed calmly through the middle of the 2 warships. This is really strange. The firepower of the merchant ship is certainly not as ferocious as the warships. Yet, it unexpectedly moves between them so peacefully, Xiao Chen thought doubtfully in his heart. This could be one of the rules of the sea. Maybe warships cannot attack merchant ships. Otherwise, if the rule is broken, all powers would turn on them. Xiao Chen. Over here. Just as Xiao Chen was thinking, a joyful voice came from above. When Xiao Chen raised his head and looked at the Nether River warship's bow about 200 meters up, Fatty Jing waved frantically at him. Xiao Chen hesitated for a while before he said to Xiao Bai, "Come, let's go." The two pushed off the bow and leapt up to the bow of the Nether River warship while many cultivators on deck stared at him in astonishment. What did Jin Dabao call him earlier? I did not hear wrong, right? Did he say, Xiao Chen? Then, it should be correct. I did not expect that person to be the white-robed bladesman, Xiao Chen. He kept too low a profile. It's over, I mocked him for imitating the white-robed bladesman earlier. How embarrassing. When the people on the deck verified Xiao Chen's identity, they all chatted passionately. They did not expect the legendary bladesman from the Heavenly Saber Pavilion to appear before them. When Wu Shangxuan watched Xiao Chen leaping up the Nether River warship, a look of deep disappointment flashed in his eyes. He muttered, "How unfortunate. I plan to make a move tonight. This fellow has at least 3 secret treasures on him. If I can get my hands on them, that would be a good harvest. However, if he goes to Chinran Island, there is still a chance. It is not that easy to obtain the treasures of the Savannah King." As the merchant ship moved further away, Wu Shangxuan stared at Xiao Chen. The greedy look in his eyes slowly faded. "Haha, white-robed bladesman, Xiao Chen, now you are very famous. Legends of you are even starting to spread in my great Tang nation. This fat bro is going to hang out with you from now on," Jin Dabao said, smiling with squinted eyes and patting Xiao Chen's back. Xiao Chen felt his shoulders sink and was embarrassed in his heart. Now that he had cultivated dragon tendon tiger bone, without having to try, he could withstand a strike of 500 kilograms of force. However, this fatty's pat felt heavy. One could imagine how much force he used. "There is no need to exaggerate," Xiao Chen said, feeling somewhat speechless. Jin Dabao laughed loudly and said, "This is too unlike you. Duan Muqing, Ji Changkong, and the others are slightly famous in the Great Tang Nation. In the previous 5-nation youth competition, they qualified for the second round." Xiao Chen had heard of the 5-nation youth competition before. It was a youth competition conducted by the Great Jin Nation once every 3 years. However, in the past few 5-nation youth competitions, there were very few people from the Great Qin Nation entering the top 100. Hence, news of this competition in the Great Qin Nation was sparse. After all, they had not achieved outstanding results. If they talked about it openly, it would be like a slap to the face. "That's right. Who is this beauty? Why don't you introduce her to this fat lord?" When Jin Dabao saw Xiao Bai standing behind Xiao Chen, his eyes immediately lit up. Xiao Bai looked at Jin Dabao and smiled gently. "I recognize you, you are Jin Dabao." Jin Dabao felt it was strange. He said, "How did you recognize me? I don't remember us meeting. Xiao Bai met you before. When I first saw you, you took one of elder brother Xiao Chen's sculptures and..." Xiao Bai was about to continue when Xiao Chen quickly stopped her. If she continued, Jin Dabao's scandalous matter would come to light. When Jin Dabao heard Xiao Bai's words, an incredulous look flashed in his eyes. He muttered, "Brother Xiao Chen, this is... I'll tell you in the future. I cannot explain properly in a short while." Xiao Chen did not wish to explain too much about Xiao Bai. When Jin Dabao noticed this, he smiled and said, "No problem, no problem. I'll bring you to meet someone first. Miss Xiao Bai, please join us. They followed Jin Dabao into the hold and walked to the top. Xiao Chen took the opportunity to ask, "What's up with the Black Dragon Group's warship?" Jin Dabao smiled casually, "Nothing much. The merchant associations vie for the trade routes on the east side of the sea. The Black Dragon Group is not willing to negotiate yet. We will fight a few battles first. Otherwise, no one will willing step back. However, now that I have seen you, we won't be able to fight today." They certainly had different worldviews. The way Jin Dabao looked at the problem was different. As for the cultivators on the deck, they were extremely nervous about the fight between the Black Dragon Group and the Golden Rock Merchant Association, making all sorts of speculations. However, the people involved did not seem tense at all. They were incredibly casual about it, as if it were a child's fight. Ding! 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 A drawn-out zither sound came from above. The zither sounded pleasing, like an expanse of clear water pouring down the side of one's ears. A melodious tune accompanied the sound. It created a state of calm and peace. Xiao Chen now had a feeling that he knew who the fatty was taking him to see. When the fatty opened the doors, it was as Xiao Chen expected. Su Xiaoxiao occupied the elegant top floor. She wore a peaceful expression as she played the zither. When Su Xiaoxiao finished the song, she picked up her zither and smiled gently. "Young Master Xiao, it's been a long time." It had indeed been a long time. Since they parted in Whitewater City, Xiao Chen had not seen Su Xiaoxiao for a year. Xiao Chen smiled faintly and said, "Miss Xiaoxiao's zither is as moving as in the past. It's merely a cultural piece. I embarrassed myself before young Master Xiao," Su Xiaoxiao said softly. Jin Dabao led the few people to the table in the room and ordered the servants to prepare wine and food. The group started to chat as they drank. "Who is this young lady?" After they chatted for a while, Su Xiaoxiao could no longer resist and asked about Xiao Bai. Xiao Chen thought for a while and said, "This is my sister, you can call her Xiao Bai." When meeting familiar people in the future, Xiao Chen planned to introduce Xiao Bai as such. This would help him to avoid unnecessary trouble. Xiao Bai took a sip of wine. She said happily, "Xiao Bai met elder sister Xiaoxiao before. Xiao Bai enjoys elder sister Xiaoxiao's zither as well." Xiao Bai was innocent and lively. Her voice was melodious and cute. The moment she spoke, it made Su Xiaoxiao laugh. "Ha ha. If you want to learn in the future, elder sister can teach you." Su Xiaoxiao smiled gently as she looked at Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai said excitedly, "Thank you, elder sister." Following that, they spoke of their encounters. After that, Su Xiaoxiao asked, "Young Master Xiao, I'm guessing that you are going to Greenwind Island for the sake of the Savannah King's treasure." Xiao Chen nodded and said, "Yes, I'm going to try my luck, see if I can find a fortuitous encounter for myself." After that, Su Xiaoxiao continued asking. Xiao Chen thought for a while and smiled gently. "After that, I will go to all the nations for experiential training. I cannot be content with what I see. I have to go out and see the world. If there is an opportunity, I hope to travel all over the entire Tianwu continent, get to know the outstanding talents and geniuses of every region." Actually, Xiao Chen still had something in mind that he did not say. He wanted to defeat all of these geniuses and climb to the peak of cultivation, never stagnating. When Su Xiaoxiao heard this, she was not surprised. She said, "This time, for the sake of the Savannah King's treasure, there are many talented geniuses of many nations on Greenwind Island. They have a small gathering on the island. If you wish to go, I can introduce you to them." Xiao Chen was tempted. The Great Qin nation ranked at the bottom of the 4 nations regarding strength. They only had 3 big sects within the Great Qin nation. This was far from comparable to the other great nations. The purpose of Xiao Chen exploration was to see the world. Su Xiaoxiao's suggestion excited him slightly. However, before you agree, you better be mentally prepared. These people are rather arrogant and unyielding, they all have high opinions of themselves. It is difficult to avoid a clash of words. When Su Xiaoxiao saw that Xiao Chen was interested, she warned him. Xiao Chen smiled faintly. Not a problem, I understand. It was hard for youths to be modest. This was especially so for these talented geniuses, they all viewed themselves highly. Since Xiao Chen arrived at the Tianwu continent, he had seen many such instances. He could completely understand Su Xiaoxiao's meaning. However, Xiao Chen was no longer that impatient youth of the past. Xiao Chen still shone, but now, he was more withdrawn. His one-year experience in the Heavenly Saber Pavilion allowed him to become more mature. Su Xiaoxiao could also see that Xiao Chen had matured through his eyes, so she did not say any more. Jin Dabao said seriously, Xiao Chen, there are many sects within the four nations. The competition between them is more intense than to what you see in the Great Qin nation. Even though the talent is on a similar level, because of their different environment, the cultivation is not on the same level. In this small gathering, there are 5 people whose strengths are definitely not beneath yours. The host of the gathering, Jin Wuji, is one of the top 100 in the 5-nation youth competition. Xiao Chen understood what Jin Dabao meant. He was reminding him to be careful. Otherwise, he might stumble. Actually, without Jin Dabao's warning, Xiao Chen also knew that. This world was so big. There were many geniuses, especially during this age. The fight in the Heavenly Saber boosted his confidence, polishing his sharpness. However, had not become bigoted enough to think that he was unrivaled, looking down on all the heroes in the world. After the group ate, at the request of the 3, Su Xiaoxiao played the zither for them once again. Su Xiaoxiao's zither music was ethereal and moving, it was hard to tire of it. They could clearly feel the intent of the song. Be it green mountains, small brooks, cool breezes, or huge armies, all sorts of changes occurred, flowing naturally with each other. After the Su Xiaoxiao finished her performance, the melody continued to reverberate in the group's ears, the elegant melody lingered. After Xiao Bai heard the music, she immediately pestered Su Xiaoxiao to teach her. Su Xiaoxiao liked her a lot and immediately accepted her as a disciple. When Xiao Bai kept addressing Su Xiaoxiao as master, it tickled her, making her laugh gently. Jin Dabao pulled Xiao Chen to the terrace on the rooftop. He took out a bag of spirit stones and handed it to Xiao Chen, 1000 medial-grade spirit stones. Consider it payment for saving this fat lord the last time. Xiao Chen frowned slightly, his expression was that of disbelief. Since when this fatty has become so generous? I'm feeling very depressed. Old brother Xiao Chen, please stop making such an expression. Does this fat lord really appear to be that stingy? It is merely 1000 medial-grade spirit stones, Jin Dabao said exasperatedly. Xiao Chen replied, indifferent, it is not that you appear to be, it is your original nature. However, I will still accept these spirit stones. Although the fatty made himself up to be generous, when he handed the spirit stones over, the fat of his face trembled, revealing his pain. Xiao Chen smiled gently and placed the spirit stones in the universe ring. Then, he said, I got something to ask you. This Su Xiaoxiao, what kind of status does she have? She seemed to be very well connected. She can casually invite people to the gathering of the 4 nations' geniuses. According to Jin Dabao's explanation, this was a prestigious gathering. The organizer was even one of the top 100 in the previous 5-nation youth competition. Without a certain status or position, there was normally no way to get into this kind of small gathering. As the sea breeze blew, Jin Badao smiled gently. He said, I have no problems telling you that. Her true identity is the Heavenly Craft Manor's young manor lord. She can be considered the successor of the Heavenly Craft Manor. The Heavenly Craft Manor's young manor lord, now it was clear. Wu Shengshuan had once said that the Heavenly Craft Manor had a great influence in the continent, much stronger than that of the three great sects. With her identity as the young manor lord, it was easy for her to gather the geniuses of various nations. Jin Dabao said, "Don't overthink this. Just prepare yourself. The speed of the warship is double that of the merchant ship. We will reach the Greenwind Island after 3 days." 3 days passed very quickly. The days at sea were peaceful. Due to some reasons, the Jin clan's warship could not dock at the harbor of Greenwind Island. The four changed to a small boat to head to the Greenwind Island's harbor. The Greenwind's harbor was more lively than any of the harbors Xiao Chen had seen in the past. With one casual glance, he saw that it was densely packed with big merchant ships from various nations. The small boat the four rowed was like an ant traveling among a pack of elephants. They seemed small and insignificant. When the group reached the shore, Su Xiaoxiao said, "The gathering will begin around noon. We should enter the city quickly and not waste any time." Su Xiaoxiao and Jin Dabao displayed shocked gazes when a silver warship came out of Xiao Chen's eye. He said softly, "If we are in a rush, let's use my secret treasure." The silver warship resized itself to suit Xiao Chen's will. After that, he took to the skies with a "su" sound, moving swiftly through the clouds. The fatty stood on the bow and shouted, "Damn, Xiao Chen, the flying formations of this warship are completely intact. It can fly without using spirit stones. Are you selling this secret treasure? I will buy it at any price." Xiao Chen said indifferently, "Stop dreaming. Even if I gave it to you, you need the corresponding controlling method before you can control it." Xiao Chen only full grasped this silver warship after he eliminated the ancient spiritual sense within it. He had spent a great deal of effort restoring it back then. How could he sell it to others? Not long later, the silhouette of a city double the size of Zaihe City appeared in Xiao Chen's vision. He slowly decreased the speed and descended, landing outside the city. Only an hour had passed. There was still a lot of time before noon. Under Su Xiaoxiao's lead, after they entered the city, they headed for the most bustling restaurant in the city. The moment the group arrived at the inn's entrance, a waiter in the restaurant looked at the portraits and compared them with the group. He immediately went before Su Xiaoxiao and lowered his head. He smiled and said, "You must be Miss Xiaoxiao. Young Master Jin has booked the entire 4th floor. We have been waiting for you, please come with me." The interior of the restaurant was large. It was more than 200 square meters. Even so, the 1st floor was packed with people. It was incredibly bustling. People even filled the 2nd and 3rd floors. There were few empty tables. Shouting and discussions reverberated throughout the inn. This situation only improved when they reached the 3rd floor. Booths and private rooms took up the 3rd floor. Ordinary people could not reach this floor. Even so, there were almost no empty booths. The Savannah King's treasure unexpectedly managed to attract so many cultivators. This is somewhat surprising. The person who caused all this, Fatty Jin, shamelessly laughed. The waiter leading them also smiled and said, "Indeed, this is thanks to the damn fatty who made the treasure map public. Everyone curses this fatty, but for so much business, the restaurant is grateful. Since last month, we have experienced a boost in business." When the group heard this, Xiao Chen and Su Xiaoxiao laughed softly. The fatty immediately looked at a loss. His smile was completely frozen. When the waiter saw something wrong with Jin Dabao's expression, he quickly said, "Sir, I am not referring to you. I am talking about that damn fatty who sold the treasure map. Someone like you is not fat. Your stature is glorious and magnificent. That damn fatty cannot compare to you." When the group heard this, even the normally aloof Su Xiaoxiao could not help laughing. She said, "You can leave now, we can go up ourselves." Fearing that the fatty would be angered and could not suppress it, Su Xiaoxiao quickly said something to send the waiter away. Jin Dabao was very depressed. However, the waiter was already far away. Even so, the waiter had said a lot of good things about him. Even if he wanted to be angry, he could not find an excuse. This depressed and at a loss expression made anyone who saw it unable to restrain a smile. The group went up the 4th floor. Compared to the 3rd floor, it was very quiet. There was no noise at all. All the tables in the large space had been cleared away, leaving a large, empty space. Tables sat along the surrounding walls. The cultivators of various nations sat at the tables, discussing martial cultivation in soft voices. Xiao Chen took a quick glance and saw that there were around 100 people here. Most of these people were inferior grade martial kings, only a few had not become martial kings yet. However, their auras were extremely strong. They were clearly peak superior grade martial saints and had been stuck there for a long time. They were merely a step shy of becoming martial kings. These people were already over 20, compared to Leng Liasu, they were inferior. However, to become martial kings before 25, they were worthy of the term, genius. This was especially true for a young seated in the middle. He was handsome with a deep gaze. His aura was as ferocious as a tiger. As he sat there quietly, he gave off a faint pressure. This person was already a peak inferior grade martial king. Out of the 100 people here, he was the only peak inferior grade martial king. The increase in grade within the martial king realm had a more distinct difference than the martial saints. Without high-ranked martial techniques or a strong state, it would be extremely difficult to overcome opponents of a higher grade. If Xiao Chen did not guess incorrectly, this person should be the person Jin Dabao spoke about. One of the top 100 in the previous 5-nation youth competition, Jin Wuji. As Xiao Chen measured the crowd, there were countless gazes that measured him as well. However, when they saw that he was only a superior grade martial saint, disdain flashed in their eyes. Soon, they looked away, shifting their gazes to Xiao Bai. A few gazes were unrestrained and filled with intense desire. "Ha ha, I thought that Miss Xiaoxiao would not arrive. Brother Jin, you came as well. Who are these two behind you?" When Jin Wuji saw Su Xiaoxiao's group, he quickly got up and walked over. Su Xiaoxiao smiled gently and said, "These two are my friends from the great Qin nation. I apologize for not informing you in advance." Jin Wuji smiled casually and said, "It's not a problem, Miss Xiaoxiao's friends are my friends too. Please, take a seat. After one more person shows up, the gathering will officially begin." Su Xiaoxiao looked around the spacious room and had doubts. She asked, "Who is not here yet?" Jin Wuji smiled mysteriously, "It's a secret, for now. You will know when she arrives, she is a major player. However, she is merely passing by. Brother Jin, stop hyping it up. Just tell us." Indeed, who in the world can make you, Brother Jin, adopt such an attitude? Just tell us all. Jin Wuji was the first disciple of the great Chu nation's Heavenly Sword Gate. They had several supreme elders in the Heavenly Sword Gate that became martial sages. They were considered a first-rate power within the entire continent. Furthermore, they ranked quite high. The status of Jin Wuji was very high already. Otherwise, he could not gather all these geniuses of the various nations. However, a person that Jin Wuji had to respect, this person had to be someone of really high status. This intensely stirred the crowd's curiosity. Just at this moment, a strong aura suddenly surged wildly in the direction of the restaurant. Everyone was stunned, and they quickly looked toward the window. Jin Wuji rejoiced. He said softly, "She is here." "Who?" A short figure entered from a window on the 4th floor. It was a curvy girl with a pretty face and a warm smile. She wore a green dress as she flew in. When the green-clothed girl landed, she withdrew her aura and revealed an apologetic smile. The girl looked at her surroundings and said, "Yuchangsi apologizes to everyone. Something cropped up, making me late." Unexpectedly, it was Yuchangsi. When everyone on the fourth floor heard her, they all revealed astonished expressions. This was really a major player. In the previous five-nation youth competition, she was in the top 50, ranked 36th. Moving from the top 100 to the top 50 was a big hurdle. From the top 50 to the top 10 was another hurdle. Each hurdle indicated a qualitative difference in their combat prowess. The most important thing was that, in the previous five-nation youth competition, Yuchangsi had only been 16. At the age of 16, she was an inferior grade martial king. Furthermore, Yuchangsi made it to the top 50. Such talent and strength could only be described as demonic. The Supreme Sky Sect, which Yuchangsi belonged to, was one of the 10 great sects of the Great Jin Nation. In the continent, they were a first-rate sect and one of the peak powers. They had dozens of supreme elders who became martial sages. Such horrifying talent was nurtured by one of the finest sects and had access to the dense spiritual energy of the Great Jin Nation. Her future was already assured. She was a bright rising star. When Jin Wuji saw that Yuchangsi had arrived, he heaved a sigh of relief. He thought that she might not come. He smiled and said, "Miss Yu, it is not noon yet. So, you are not late. Merely, we are all early." Indeed, Miss Yu doesn't have to feel bad, we just arrived ourselves. The moment Yuchangsi arrived, she became the focus of everyone's attention. No one minded her arriving late. Jin Wuji led Yuchangsi to the table in the middle. After she sat, he got up and said softly, "I believe everyone is here today because of the treasure left by the Savannah King. I am honored that everyone is willing to participate in this gathering for my sake. I have two purposes in this gathering. One is to avoid any fights to the death over a treasure. I wanted everyone to become familiar with each other and take what they need as according to their abilities. We will set a gentleman's agreement never to use sneak attacks or despicable moves. We all are from different places and of different sects of the various nations. It is very rare for us to meet. My second purpose is to take advantage of this opportunity to exchange moves with each other, helping each other improve and gaining what we all need." As for the first purpose, Xiao Chen felt that it was not practical. Not to mention the people here, there were still many experts who were not present. Even if all of the people here set a gentleman's agreement, Xiao Chen did not believe that, when a true treasure appeared, anyone would care about the agreement. However, Xiao Chen believed that everyone would agree to it on the surface. They would say one thing and do another. Lu Meng, supports Brother Jin's suggestions. I will be the first to make the gentleman's agreement. If there is anyone here who obtains a treasure first, I will not use any sneak attacks. A stout cultivator with a huge saber took the initiative and spoke. Wang Hao, also support Brother Jin's suggestion, willing to make the gentleman's agreement. Li Yu, also support Brother Jin's suggestion, willing to make the gentleman's agreement. As Xiao Chen had expected, all the cultivators indicated that they willing supported Jin Wuji's suggestion, one after another. Soon, everyone expressed their intentions. Only the four people at Xiao Chen's table remained. Everyone looked at them. Jin Dabao and Su Xiaoxiao had special statuses and could be ignored. Based on aura, Xiaobai appeared to have just become a martial saint, such weakness could be ignored as well. The one they truly paid attention to was Xiao Chen. He was a superior grade martial saint, and his aura was strong. He was strong enough to break through the weakened waves of Chinran Island. Even after a period of silence, Xiao Chen still said nothing. He could bring himself to make such a hypocritical statement. Just ignore him, there are no experts in the great Qin nation. A mere superior grade martial saint is just here to get in on the action. There is no problem with him not making the gentleman's agreement. That's right, he probably can't even break through the huge waves. If he cannot even make it onto the Qinren island, there is no point in making the gentleman's agreement. Perhaps he is wise. He knows that his strength is low and is too embarrassed to say something. Seeing that Xiao Chen had refused to speak, the cultivators who found him an eyesore all mocked him. If it were not for Su Xiaoxiao, they would have said even more horrible things. This was the reality of the Tianwu continent. Without strength, regardless of wherever you were, others would not grant you respect. Xiao Chen's expression did not change. He did not mind these words in the least. He merely grasped his lunar shadow saber in his hand and stopped Ji Dabao and Su Xiaoxiao, who intended to speak up for him. The best way to refute them was to prove his own strength with the saber in his hand. Words were worth nothing, the saber was more direct. Jin Wuji also felt displeased with Xiao Chen not making the gentleman's agreement. There are so many people who made the agreement already. Yet, you, a great Qin nation expert, did not. It is clear that this fellow is not giving me, Jin Wuji, any face. However, he is the friend of Su Xiaoxiao. I cannot make my displeasure too obvious. A smile appeared on Jin Wuji's face. He said, since we all already made the gentleman's agreement, there is nothing else to say. Let's start exchanging pointers, restraining ourselves as we do so. We will do this match by match. After that, the others will give their comments. That way, everyone can gain some comprehension. The moment Jin Wuji spoke, two people immediately entered the empty space in the center. After all the tables were removed, there was a lot of space. If it were a simple exchange of pointers, this would be more than sufficient. Both of you, remember to restrain yourself. Don't injure each other and spoil the cordiality. Since Jin Wuji was the host, he also functioned as the referee. When he saw people intending to exchange pointers, he reminded them to remain cordial. Ha ha, Brother Jin, rest assured. I, Lu Meng, know the limit. I will absolutely not injure Brother Zhou. Brother Jin, rest assured. I will use, at most, 50% of my strength. The two people who came forward had gentle smiles and calm tones. However, the tension between them was clear. They intended to compete with each other, not giving way to each other. Jin Wuji frowned slightly and returned to his seat beside Yuchangsi. He said, in that case, begin. Boom. The moment Jin Wuji spoke, the two made their moves. A fist and leg made contact in the air. An intense shockwave spread out, and they both retreated 10 meters. After a while, they leapt forward and continued fighting. A fiery red light appeared on one of them, and a formless wind flowed around the other. One of them had comprehended the state of fire, and the other, the state of wind. Furthermore, based on the situation, they had pretty high comprehensions. They clashed with over 100 moves, refusing to relent to the other. Finally, they moved back, about to make their real moves. Lu Meng retrieved the huge saber from his back. The saber was 3 inches wide and 2 meters long. It was a ferocious, thick saber. With a thought, vibrant red flames covered the saber. The cultivator with the surname Zhou took out 2 swords from his spatial ring and held them tightly. Unexpectedly, he used the rare twin sword style. The twin swords were about 1.7 meters long and 2 fingers wide. They were completely snow white and flickered with a cold light. Occasionally, a tiny tornado emerged from the blades. Bang! 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 The two roared and charged at each other. The cultivator with the surname Zhou used the advantage of speed from the state of wind. He moved around Lu Meng and continuously sent out strikes at the latter, his twin swords dancing around. Sword images moved around, forming a cage of light that enclosed Lu Meng. The cultivator with the surname Zhou was very fast, and with the advantages of the twin sword style, he suppressed Lu Meng until he could only make an occasional counterattack. Although Lu Meng made very few moves and spent most of this time dodging, whenever it looked like he was going to meet defeat, he would make an explosive move, neutralizing the finishing move his opponent had prepared. Hence, for a period, no one could triumph over each other. Watching the situation, the cultivator with the surname Zhou seemed to have a huge advantage. Lu Meng could not keep up with his speed at all. Jin Dabao introduced, these two managed to make it into the second round of the five-nation youth competition. The one with the saber is Lu Meng. The one with the twin swords is Zhou Lingang. In their respective nations, they are top-notch experts. They are now inferior grade martial kings. Comparing to the talents in the Great Qin nation, they should be about on par with Jichangkong. However, the competition in their nation is more intense than the Great Qin nation. Hence, they are now stronger than Jichangkong. Xiao Chen nodded. He agreed with Jin Dabao's opinion. The two had comprehended their states to great perfection. They were not far from reaching consummation. However, it had not been easy for them to cultivate to this level. Who do you think will be victorious? Jin Dabao asked as he watched the fight. Xiao Chen thought for a while and said, probably Lu Meng. His comprehension of the state of fire is deeper. He already has a bit of his will infused in it. Every time he makes a move, he neutralizes the advantages his opponent gained using countless moves in a moment. On the other hand, Zhou Lingang has only used the speed of the state of wind. There is no trace of his personal comprehension. I guess that the comprehension of his state has likely raised as a result of his master's guidance and not something comprehended on his own. The state of wind did not only consist of speed. Xiao Chen understood this when he fought Morong Chong. The special characteristics of the state of wind were quick, faintly discernible, formless, flamboyant, and moving as one-willed. When Yuchangsi, who was beside Jin Wuji, heard this, a strange look flashed in her eyes. She gazed at Xiao Chen suspiciously. Based on what she knew, Zhou Lingang's state had, in fact, raised as a result of his master's guidance. You are an insignificant martial saint. Since when do you have the qualifications to comment on the fights between martial kings? What reason do you have to predict Zhou Lingang's loss? If you don't understand it, don't speak nonsense. Be careful of biting your own tongue. When a cultivator on friendly terms with Zhou Lingang heard what Xiao Chen had said, he immediately rebutted. Another person beside him followed up, indeed. Zhou Lingang is suppressing Lu Meng to the point where his ability to counterattack is limited. How can he be defeated? Young Master Jin did not invite you to this gathering. You came uninvited, so please do not speak nonsense. Just sit there quietly and watch. Wait until you are a martial king before you comment. Jin Dabao was frustrated and was about to curse them. Xiao Chen stopped him and said indifferently, Zhou Lingang will lose within 3 moves. Just ignore what they say. They were merely some dancing clowns. Xiao Chen could not be bothered with them. When the truth was revealed, they would end up slapping their own faces. Ignorant. How can Lu Meng emerge victorious in 3 moves? Zhou Lingang is currently suppressing Lu Meng. Lu Meng is struggling to counterattack. How can he lose, not to mention within 3 moves? Ignorant kid, I knew you were merely spouting nonsense. This person had probably stayed in the Great Qin nation for too long. He is not aware of the heights of heaven and the depths of the earth. He thinks that, after leaving the Great Qin nation, he is still an outstanding talent. The Great Qin nation is the weakest of the 5 nations. Yet, he still has the gall to express his opinions here. The fight continued. The discussion had not distracted them. If experts at this level were so easily distracted by their external environment, then they would not be geniuses. Zhou Lingang moved his twin swords around and created strong winds from his swords. Once again, he suppressed Lu Meng completely while his momentum rose. Just when Zhou Lingang's momentum was about to hit its peak, he focused his gaze and held his swords together. He prepared to enact the finishing move. Dang! However, just at this moment, Lu Meng suddenly made his move. Once again, just as Zhou Lingang's momentum was about to reach his peak, he used a flaming saber chi to force Zhou Lingang's finishing move back. This was the third time. Lu Meng had broken Zhou Lingang's finishing move thrice. Furthermore, this always happened just before his momentum reached its peak. Jin Wuji and Yuchangsi both shook their heads at the same time. As the saying went, things did not happen 3 times without reason. After not succeeding 3 times, there was no more chance for victory. Zhou Lingang was about to lose. Damn it! He broke it again. Frustration appeared in Zhou Lingang's heart. However, he did not mind it too much. His opponent could not catch up to him. He could build his momentum once again. Boom! Just as Zhou Lingang was about to start the assault again, Lu Meng suddenly laughed maniacally. Brother Zhou, are you still thinking you have a chance? Rise! The aura that Lu Meng had suppressed exploded. Flames appeared at his feet and rose up. A sinister evil beast appeared above him. Its jaw hung open, and it clawed the air, its roar echoing throughout the room. When the evil beast roared, Lu Meng's state of fire raised to the limit. He immediately suppressed Zhou Lingang, whose momentum was low. The state of fire rapidly suppressed the state of wind. Soon, Zhou Lingang was forced to a corner. He could not move. His expression changed. I'm finished. My state is suppressed, and I no longer have the advantage of speed. Lu Meng hacked down, and Zhou Lingang held his twin swords together to block the attack. However, his strength was weaker than Lu Meng's. At this point, Zhou Lingang's state was completely suppressed. He could not block the strike. Sweat dripped from his forehead as he bitterly held on. I admit defeat. Lu Meng shouted and stepped forward. The entire 4th floor shook. A huge force immediately knocked Zhou Lingang flying, and he fell to the floor miserably. Zhou Lingang had been defeated within 3 moves. It was just as Xiao Chen had said. The people who mocked Xiao Chen paled and felt embarrassed. This kid actually guessed correctly. He is merely a superior grade martial saint. It was a wild guess. Definitely a wild guess. If even we could not tell, how could he have done so? The few people were depressed and said things to deceive themselves and others. Right, it must have been a wild guess. However, even so, I feel uncomfortable seeing him like this. He is too arrogant. If it were not for Miss Xiaoxiao, I would not have endured his presence. I would make a move to teach this kid a lesson. Hey, it looks like someone can no longer endure. Bai Shuiyang is already going up. A male dressed in white with a sword hanging at his waist walked over to Xiao Chen. He said indifferently, I am Bai Shuiyang. I heard your evaluation earlier, and you seem to have some strength. I would like to seek your advice, is that possible? The fatty whispered, this fellow is Zhou Lingang's good friend. He is probably here to help his friend to maintain his dignity. It is best to be careful. Jin Wuji, who sat in the middle, frowned slightly. He said, Bai Shuiyang is just a step away from advancing to peak inferior grade martial king. It's not very appropriate for you to spar with a superior grade martial saint, don't you agree?